Good day, my name is Mandisa Shirries. I'm the Acting Executive on Transformation. Today I'll be sharing more about our new transition that we had to move from the EAB to the PPRA. I'll basically be touching base on the transformation. What is a transformation approach? It basically is saying that our approach is to make sure that we revolve around the need of the general new value and unlocking opportunities. What do we do in terms of the intent of tackling? In the South African triple challenges, we know that there is unemployment, we know that there is a poverty and inequality. In terms of the transformation on the PPRA, we're basically reflecting on demographic of the South Africans. What is our strategy in terms of seeking and contribution toward the creation and an enable environment which will attract the greater numbers of the previously disadvantaged persons to the property practitioners' professions? What do we mean in terms of our purpose in terms of transformation programs? We know that in transformation property sector, it regards the economic participation of the race and the culture of the industry. What is, in terms of the PPRA transformation program, what do we need to do? We need to make sure that we retain and we keep them working. We've got under transformation initiatives, we've got our programs that is One Learner, One Property Practitioners. We've got our, that deals with the youth program. We've got the incubation program that is dealing with the Amnesty campaign. We've got principalization, where we're basically focusing on the incubation for the principals. We've got what we do in terms of PPRA, we need to do the consumer awareness campaign. We also have the educational interventions. What do? We deal with women empowerment. Then we have to look in terms of what do we mean when we talk about the One Learner, One Property Practitioner youth program. It's a skills program that we take the unemployed youth, the previously disadvantaged 18 to 35, we bring the youth into the sector, we train them, and then during the internship period, the learners will do the beneficiary of the program that will be exposed in terms of experiential learning as well as the theoretical. What do we mean in terms of that? Basically, the learners will do the NQF level 4 in the real estate qualification, where the 30% is their theoretical, the 70% is the practical work. Then we also look in terms of what do we do, because the PPRA, we need to remember that it states that we need to have the guidelines in terms of our programs. So in our guidelines, we make sure that we provide for the One Learner, One Property Practitioner program in processing guideline and procedures in recruiting a burden of the suitable, qualified and competent candidate in a fair and non-discriminatory manner. What do we have to do also in our guidelines? We need to make sure that there is a policy that is set aside. We need to make sure that when we implement the One Learner, One Estate program, we know exactly who we're dealing with, what do we need to do, what is the further providing in quality in terms of qualifying criteria. In terms of the guideline also, the document will make sure that we ensure that the program and strategies of to be implemented for the One Learner program, its practical program, are clearly defined. And we need to also to make sure that is the best possibility, fair and non-discriminatory approach. And in terms of, we need to make sure that we advertise, we make it for all the public to see. In terms of that also, we will be doing the recruitment of the learners that is regulated by the PPRA. We also need to make sure that the minimum requirements are met for any person who may qualify to be on the program. The policy also will be set aside in terms of requirement and accordance with the policy, and the following must be met. We need to make sure the application must be knowledgeable in the property sector and must have at least the 12-month experience in the sector, having completed the NQF level 4, that is a competency that now we call it the candidacy program. And you must be over the 35. The most important recruitment of the candidate should be undertaken after the approval by our CEO. What do we mean also with the next initiative? We're talking about incubation for the SMMEs. We know that in terms of the transformation initiatives, we need to identify the SMMEs in the property sector. Basically, we mean the previously disadvantaged, the black owned. We're also going to support them in terms of providing by the PPRA in terms of financial support. That will be their loan and their grant. We also need to make sure that we strategize development support and access to market. What do we mean in terms of the sustainability of the program? We need to make sure that we grow of the interns in the real estate sector. We need to clear growth plan for the training interns that now being called the candidacy to be integrated into the incubated with the black property practitioners run by the SMMEs. Then we also make sure in terms of the PPRA that we also have the guidelines on what they need to do in terms of the PPRA, in terms of a funding for the criteria for the SMME. We also need to make sure we develop and promote the increase of the participation by the opportunities for the SMME in the PPRA procurement processes. We also need to make sure that we identify and assess the minor contract opportunities within the provinces for the development and support of the SMMEs. We also need to make sure that we identify the opportunities where their minor contract may be awarded to the SMME. We identify, align the minor contract with the developers, development and support the program for the SMME in the municipality. We need to promote the partnership between the municipalities and the private sector in respect of development and support to the SMMEs. Then we also have what we call the incubation for principals. What is the objective of the principalization? In terms of the Property Practitioners Act, will embark on an aggressive recruitment of all suitable qualifying previously disadvantaged persons and businesses and assist them to qualify as principal of the estate agencies or property practitioners. Currently, we have the program that will be in the form of the loan and the grant. How much? I know in terms of our estate agencies, our property practitioners will be asking how much will be the loan, how much will be the grant. It's basically a total of 500,000. That is 250,000 that will be your loan, 250,000 that will be the grant. Further, of future in terms of implementation, we will going to support and qualify individual in terms of establishing their own agencies within the period of 12 months from the enrollment, thereafter by providing the financial material support. In terms of the PPRA, we have to make sure that we do the incubation we need to create the guidelines for the incubation for principals. We need to make sure that we include that the applicant must be a South African citizen. In accordance to the preconditions in the program, the South African citizen, therefore, this must be taken into account for the first stage of the selection. We also need to make sure that the applicant is knowledgeable in terms of the property sector, must have at least the 12-month experience in the sector, having the qualification of the National Qualification Framework in terms of the level 4 and also PDE 4. We also need to make sure that the parity of applicant can be enrolled into the principalization program according to they must at least have the qualification as the full status practitioners that requires are inherent to the program. Then we also move in terms of another initiative in terms of the transformation program, that is the consumer awareness. What do we mean by that? We need to make sure that we following the PPI consumer education and awareness program. We need to make sure that we do the billboard outdoor advertising. We need to go out and speak to do radio interviews. We need to do the road shows. We also need to put into platform of social media to speak about our consumers. We also need to make sure that we do the national radio advertising, the TV advertising that will follow into the due course. Then we also need to make sure on the consumer awareness, we also need to have the guidelines. In terms of the PPA, when we engage in the approach on the consumer outreach initiatives, we must make sure that we apply the appropriate engagement and consultation technical to the encouraging feedback and to enhance the stakeholders and the public awareness of the PPA. We also need to make sure that we develop the policies in terms of the program, the service and initiatives. We also need to make sure that we employ presentation content approved by our CEO in terms of reporting line during the stakeholder engagement. What do we mean in terms of also the PPA branding? It should be visible throughout the stakeholders event. We also need to make sure that we have flyers, brochures, and educations. We also now, in terms of the PPRA, we need to develop the financial incentive for the transformation initiatives. What do we mean by that? Our aim is to make sure that we develop the financial initiative for the transformation initiatives. We need to make sure that we establish the transformation fund to make sure that we support all the transformation initiatives. We all need to make sure that we do the guidelines for the transformation fund. The guidelines are founded in terms of the chapter 4 in section 3 of the PPA of 2019, which states that the authority must utilize the property sector transformation fund in such manner as may prescribe, which may include the transformation and empowerment programs, which are the principalization program. We promote the black-owned firms principle, the regularization program, that we need to promote and encourage participation of historical disadvantage due to non-compliant. We also consumer awareness, the program to promote awareness in terms of the property, transaction and business undertaking. The work readiness program to promote and enhance participation of the historical disadvantage in the property sector. How will the fund be allocated? According to the primary areas of funding and state priority that are your PDI, your HDI. These priorities are consistent with the circumstances of their respective of subsectors. The strategic vision of the current Act, it says in strategic plan framework and the annual performance plan. We also need to look in terms of the establishment of the Property Research Center. Why do we need to have that? In terms of the Property Research Center, will make it easy and accessible information that will have ordinarily been unavailable for the PDIs. For example, we're talking about the compulsory annual audit report that were demanded by the old Act, regardless of the size of the turnover of the entity presented a barrier to the industry. We'll also, in terms of our initiative in transformation, we'll be looking in terms of the educational intervention for black women. How are we going to implement that? We're all going to make sure that we do workshops that will be held for black women to start their own property firms and encourage black women to write their professional designation exam level 5. We also need to do the processing of the internal policies to accommodate those previously a woman to enter into the space of becoming principal. What will be our future? We'll make sure that we conduct more workshops to encourage black women owning their own firms and be principal of their estate agencies. Also, when we look in terms of the PPA, it takes in terms of the chapter 4, section 20 of 2. It basically telling us as a PPA that we need to ensure that all organs and procedures, we procure the goods and services from the BBBEE compliant practitioners. And I need to encourage all the stakeholders that transformation is here to stay and will make sure that we transform the industry. I thank you.